to Amanda, and before we switch it over, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. So Amanda is 24 years old, and she's originally from Cumberland, Rhode Island. And 3 years ago, she began her work in the nonprofit world by volunteering her time as an AmeriCorps member for City Year in Hampshire. She spent 10 months working in a 5th grade classroom, tutoring and mentoring students in literacy, math, attendance, and behavior in a nationwide effort to decrease the dropout rate in high school students. Since her first year of national service, she has spent the last 2 years working for AmeriCorps Vista, which stands for Volunteers in Service to America, which helps nonprofits just like City Year build capacity and strengthen their ability to help the youth population. As a Vista, she helps to train the AmeriCorps members working in classrooms, plan service days for students and teachers, and engage corporate sponsors in service with City Year alumni in hopes of expanding people's knowledge of City Year's work. She clearly has a lot to share, so Amanda, I am going to pass it over to you, and just make sure that you unmute yourself.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So my first screen here is just a couple of pictures. Like I said, I work for City Year, and at City Year, there are 50 core members working in 6 elementary schools that we work in, and my job is to manage the 6 teams that work in those 6 schools. And so there's anywhere from 7 to 11 people on each of those teams. And I basically manage each of those teams in creating and implementing the projects that you see here. A lot of them are beautification projects that we do for schools, putting beautiful like murals on their blacktop and just decorating their staircases and making their yards. Their play areas look really great. We also do a lot of stuff inside of the school as well. I think like that was like a little bit about me, but what I want you guys to like think about too is, you know, like I want this to be able to be something that you can do for your projects, and I know that like not all of our projects are going to be the same, and so how I originally start thinking about it and going through like the YSA grant, if you have access to that and your MOUs, like think about how many youth you're going to be engaging, and like based on those numbers, then you kind of have an idea of like how many projects you're going to come up with. So that's like where my mindset starts when I start thinking about the types of projects and things like that. So for example, if I'm going to be engaging 1,000 youth between 6 schools, that's about 160 kids per school, and that means that I have to be able to manage a team who can create projects for 160 kids. And so that's a really good way to break down the goals of your MOU, and also like your capacity building priorities. Then thinking about, you know, how many of those based on your grants that you are going to be working on, and how you're going to allow yourself to like expand on those based on like your needs. So I think something else that that is helpful is finding connections in your community and deciding like how they can help with that. So for example, like I said, like we work in schools, and so a huge partner is Aramark. They're a huge sponsor of schools, you know, supplying like food and the janitorial staff and so much more to the schools. And so we partner with Aramark, and they help us out by allowing us access to the school before and after hours for an extended period of time in order to, you know, like prep projects and things. And so think about the people who are connected to the places that you want to help in order to gain like benefits from them. So I always like to make like an overview and like a work plan of everything that I'm doing. And but like what I tried to do like on the screen was take pictures of the documents that I've like made in the past, so I can kind of give you like a visual of an example. And so like for my overview of GYSD is basically like, okay, my working timeline, this is what I'm going to be doing, these are going to be the people's roles, and I've set up down at the bottom, here are bi-weekly meetings that I want to have with my 6 different teams. That way I can make sure that they're on track, but also to give us time for them to ask me any questions they have, and for them to also use each other to brainstorm projects and just use each other for like best practices, like, oh, you made that really great schedule, let me share that with, other people. So I always make sure that I am setting up meetings for check-ins, due dates. I'm a really big calendar person. I like to put things visually on calendars because it allows you to see how much time you have in between tasks. And I think something huge that has been a learning point for me is being able to delegate instead of me doing all of this planning myself. I have 50 people who are working in these schools, and they have 160 kids at each of these schools that they can be using. And so make sure you're using your whole team as best you can to utilize them and everything that they have to offer as well. So another thing that I use while managing the teams is a checklist, and this is broken down by things that need to happen. So at a school, we have a lot of communication with the principal that has to happen, pre-planning with the principal, making sure that they approve all the projects that we're doing, making sure that they know the schedule for the day. Then there's project lists, okay, so in the after-school program, we're going to have them help design the projects that we're going to be doing. And so I use checklists to kind of just go through the process in my head. And then a step further than that, I make a week-by-week schedule in order to go over with my team. And so this is something that I can give to each team that works in the school, and what they do based on that is then they can follow this plan and use the dates that are on it in order to help them plan their projects. So great, so on April 6th, we're going to make sure that I'm going to train them on how to run a paint station, so that way when we're doing painting projects, we can be as careful as possible when we're carrying a ton of paint out, and they can make sure that they're available on that date. So this kind of gives them, similar to what I was saying before with the calendar, a long-range work plan so that they know all of the things that are going to be due, and they can plan according to whatever meets their needs when they need to start doing things. I also, when planning, make sure make sure you're thinking through everything. So now we've gone through the planning process, and you've started to pick out your projects, and now you need to start making tool lists. And so each project is broken up, and you're making sure that each project has everything they need, and it's split up, so that way all of the people who are working on those projects know exactly what is needed. But then based on that, making lists for things that, what kind of things am I going to have to buy, and what kind of things maybe I can have in-kinded from places who will donate to us, and what kind of things maybe do you already have. And then from there, being able to make a pricing sheet. Maybe you have someone who's donating a monetary donation to you, and now you have this extra money that you can go and purchase things from. How are you going to spend that money? For mine, for example, we have on the left-hand column on A, we have our schools, and then all of the things that they're going to need: paint colors, paint supplies, gardening supplies, wood, and it's all categorized by things that they're going to need by their projects. And then on the next slide, it's a pricing sheet, because each school gets a $100 budget, and so you can see at the bottom line, they've maximized their amount of money that they can spend on things that they're going to need for their projects. So these are just some other helpful prep plans set up in other notes. The week or two prior, I always like to leave the last 2 weeks open. Make sure that everything is kind of like set and all your paperwork and things like that is done prior to 2 weeks before. That way, if anything needs to be adjusted, if things need to be bought or maybe like changed around, you have time to do that. The more your team knows, like I said, delegate. The more people who know the information, the better. I've run into problems where on a day of service, I'm the one with all of the information, and that can be not only stressful for yourself, but then also not very convenient for everybody who has to keep only coming to you. You can't be in like a million places at once. Some other things that I've run into, consider the weight of the materials if you're like buying stuff. I've had to pick up a ton of, literally like I think it was like 2 tons of soil before, and I had to rent a vehicle to pick it up because it was being like, obviously like 6 different schools were like using soil for different planter boxes and things like that, and making sure that, you know, you thought through like all of the different details, considering the weight of the materials that you're buying, so you can have the appropriate vehicle to pick it up. And what I also like to do is do a walkthrough of each site, see where the projects are going to happen, talk to the people who are going to be running the projects, and so they know that if they can explain to me their project and how they're going to run it, I know that they're going to be confident, and that's all I need to trust them, is that they're going to be able to explain it to their children who are going to be doing the projects with them. So those are kind of just a couple helpful like paperwork items that I've used to kind of go through my thought process on things and helpful tips. If there's any other questions people have, or if you want the documents that I use, or if you want to ask me more questions about them, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Or, like I said, to send you the documents to use if something seems like it would be helpful for you.
Great. Thank you so much, Amanda. I know that I am a huge fan of lists, and I really appreciated you making sure that everyone know how important they are, and I definitely agree with you that it's very important to stay organized. So thank you so much.